Everybody ready to proceed? Okay. Good afternoon, and welcome to this online hearing of the Committee of Adjustment for the City of Ottawa. Committee of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial tribunal appointed by City Council to make decisions on certain types of applications under the Planning Act. My name is John Blatherwick, and I will be chairing this hearing today. With me are my fellow panel members, Bonnie Oak-Charon, Stan Wilder, Heather McLean, and Michael Wildman. Please take note that this video conference is being live streamed on YouTube. This video will be archived along with today's agenda on the city's website. Before we begin, we have a few items to outline for your information. Just my screen a little bit here, that's better. While the issues surrounding development in the city are broad, our mandate is quite limited. The committee cannot consider aspects of the proposal that are not related to the required variances, noise, pollution, property maintenance, property values, prosecution for illegal construction, personal comments regarding neighbors, agents, or applicants, additional variances without proper public notice. If there is an identified need for an additional variance or variances, including an increase in the extent of the relief required, a recirculation of the application is required. As part of the statutory public notification requirements, each applicant was required to post a sign on the property and file a statutory declaration confirming the sign posting. We don't have any, so I'm going to have to administer an oath to each applicant and or agent as your file comes forward on the agenda. Regarding quorum, if this is lost during the hearing due to technical difficulties, the proceedings will be paused to allow time for the resolution of the issue. Failing the ability to reinstate quorum, hearing of the items remaining will resume at the outset of the next regularly scheduled meeting of the committee. In terms of the hearing process, listed on the agenda and appearing on the screen are the applications we will hear today. For the sake of efficiency, the committee may deal with agenda items in a different order. Note that the committee members have reviewed the application materials prior to this hearing and any written submissions received in support or in opposition. In addition, the committee will hear today oral submissions from any interested parties as part of our proceedings. The committee may ask for a brief presentation by the applicant, followed by questions from the members where clarification may be needed. The public submissions portion of the hearing will then begin, and any interested parties will be invited to make their submissions to the committee. Panel members may then ask follow-up questions where additional clarification may be required. When you are called upon to provide your comments, we will ask you to do the following. Start with stating your name and municipal address. For the record, we may ask you to spell your name. Then begin your submission by addressing your comments to the panel members. You may ask questions, please direct them only to the chair. Please limit your comments to a maximum of 5 minutes. Any exceptions will be at the committee's discretion. Once all interested parties have had an opportunity to address the panel, the public submissions portion of the hearing will then be closed. The committee will then make an oral decision to either grant or deny the application. The committee may also choose to reserve its decision. In such case, the panel will deliberate further on the evidence presented immediately following adjournment of the public hearing. In either case, the committee will send within 10 days of its decision, and to all parties and those who have requested it, a written notice of decision that sets out the reasons for the decision. All decisions of the committee are subject to a 20-day appeal period during which the decision can be appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal for a fee. Before we begin, we have several items of business to deal with. Are there any declarations of interest from any of the members regarding the applications on this agenda or the other two panels sitting today?
Yes, Mr. Chair, on item 18, I'll be declaring an interest, will not be participating in discussion on it. The agent is a firm that I have done business with and I continue to have some warranty issues with, so therefore I will not be participating.
Thank you, Mr. Wellman. We also have 2 sets of minutes to adopt. We have to confirm them, the minutes from August the 4th and the minutes for August 18th. Are there any revisions, additions necessary for the minutes of August the 4th? If not, then can we have a show of hands adopting the minutes from the 4th of August, 2021? And the same with August 18th. Any omissions, additions, amendments necessary for the minutes of August the 18th? Seeing none. Show of hands, please, to adopt the minutes from August 18th, 2021. Okay, the minutes are adopted. We will now move to adjournment requests. We have a number of them today. Second here. Oh. First adjournment request is for 256, item number 1 on the agenda, sorry, 256 Northwestern Avenue. And the adjournment is coming from the Planning Department and the Champlain Park Community Association. Is the Planning Department member there, please?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. So the Planning Department considers the application incomplete.
Yeah.
And therefore the adjournment was requested. So the application is missing streetscape character analysis, and therefore it is not clear if attached front-facing garages and single-car driveways are allowed. And there are a couple of other details that will need redesign or additional minor variances. And there are also trees concerns that has to be addressed. Thank you.
So we have additional minor variances as far as the department is concerned.
Possibly.
Possibly, but not confirmed.
Yes.
Can these matters be resolved by the 20th of October?
We can try. If the applicant is confirming that he will be able to redesign without additional minor variances, yes.
Okay. Mr. Gavron, is he there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much, everybody, for hearing us today. We shouldn't have any minor variances, additional minor variances. If the city is referring maybe to the height of the building, that should be resolved. I believe there's just missing a little bit of information about the grading. There shouldn't be any minor variances to my knowledge, except for the one that we're applying right now, which is the lot width. I see that the city did ask for adjournment based on a couple of notes, and we can resolve them even before October 20th. I don't know if you can fit us into 5th of October. I believe there's
No,
a hearing.
The
No?
hearing on October the 6th is full. The earliest we
All
have
right.
space in is the 20th.
Then we will take the next available one.
So you're confident that all these issues can be resolved by the 20th?
More than confident, sir. Yes.
Okay. All right. The Champlain Park Community Association also requested adjournment. Is there a member there? One of their representatives? No, not a problem. We have the letter. All right. So hearing that,
I'm here.
Ms. Pearl, to the adjournment.
Yes, we actually would really prefer an adjournment so that we can work with the builder. He
Okay.
actually does need additional minor variances if he continues with this particular application, something that we provided information on to him on June the 30th. So if this is to meet the requirements just on lot width, then, which we really agree with. We're very happy to support that. So we would be very happy to work with him to ensure that the application goes forward as a really good application that our community members can agree with.
We have heard the owner say that there won't be any additional variances in his opinion. Therefore, we're looking at the 20th of October for a resumed hearing.
Well, if he can make the redesigns, because there were a number of items.
That's what he's indicated. So
Oh, okay.
we have to take him at his word.
Yep,
All right.
and we're happy with that.
Okay. So, Ms. McLean?
Mr. Chair, I'm going to suggest we sine die the application. The applicant can, what we're hearing from planning is that a streetscape character analysis hasn't been submitted. And if the applicant can make whatever revisions are necessary, he could still get on to October the 20th, but If we sine die it, then the onus is on the applicant to provide the required information, and then a hearing can be scheduled.
Other members on an application sine die? Mr. Gavran?
Excuse me for interrupting. How long would I have to give the information? Is next week okay? Will I be okay if all the documents are in next week for the 20th of October?
If you can get it all done by the 20th of October, but what we're hearing from the planning department is that may not be possible. So the best route may be to adjourn this sine die. And that way you come back to us with a full application. Mr. Wilder?
Yeah, I would, Mr. Grant, I would suggest you meet with the community association. Don't set them aside. They obviously are very, very well versed in the zoning for this area, believe me. And if they feel that you might need some additional variances contrary to what you're saying, you better check with them sooner than later. So there should be some discussion with the community association between the two of you, not just by correspondence, but I imagine you should really get to them personally. Thank you.
Perfect.
All right, on the matter of adjourning the application sine die until such time, well, some point in the future. All in favor of adjourning this application sine die, the application is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next application up for adjournment is item 4 on the agenda, 322 Somerset Street East. And this adjournment is requested by the applicant and one nearby neighbor. Is the applicant there? That would be.
I'm here,
Ms.
Jessica
Dow.
Dow. Yes, hi. Nice to see you all.
To the adjournment, Ms. Dow.
Yes, so this is an application that's proceeding through site plan control process. It went on hold for a period of time and it's recently just been resubmitted through that process and for the minor variances in tandem. When initial consultation was done, it was quite some time ago, and we've since learned that some of the nearby property owners have actually changed ownership. So we would appreciate, given the letters that we've received, some extra time to consult with those neighbors and community members and address any potential concerns, questions, and then move forward with the application.
All right, what stage of the site plan review are you at?
We've completed one round of the review. Through that review, many of the questions and concerns from city staff were addressed through transition to a new architectural team. So planning staff is well aware of the application proceeding. They have very few concerns remaining. It's essentially only a civil review at this stage for site plan control. Most of the comments have been resolved. We're still awaiting our second round of comments though, but I have been in coordination with the planner.
So you don't anticipate any further variances with this application?
No.
All right. So we've heard from the applicant's agent regarding an adjournment. October the 20th is the earliest date. Is that sufficient time?
That would be sufficient time from our perspective, yes.
Okay. All in favor of adjourning this application until the 20th of October?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, if I may speak, I'm the property owner for next
Sorry, Ms.
door.
Porter, I didn't see you on there. Please.
Oh,
proceed.
no worries. So my name is Charlotte Porter, and I'm a property owner for the neighboring property of 330 Somerset Street East. And the reason we appreciate the applicant looking to adjourn to kind of explore the concerns of the neighbors, which is nice. But I'd also like to put on record the reason for the adjournment is that there are two significant errors with this application. So first, the address is listed wrong. So if even on the agenda, it's listed as 322 Somerset Street East, when it is in fact 332 Somerset Street East. And the other significant error is that it is located in Ward 12, which is the Rito Vanier ward, and not Ward 14, which is Somerset. Therefore, no, the proper notice hasn't been given. For instance, the counselor for Rito Vanier did not get notice of this, and it wasn't a concern to them because it's not in their ward. So that being said, proper notice needs to be sent with the correct information so that people of the area can actually express their concerns if they have any.
Thank you, Ms. Porter. Mr. Wildman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just real quick from committee staff, is it possible that it was circulated to the correct word, but just shown incorrectly on the agenda? Just if there's a clarification that could be made there.
I spoke with the ward councillor today with their planning, and they did not receive it, as it was in Ward 14, which is not of their concern.
Okay, I just thank you very much. Just from the committee staff, if they can also advise on that.
Hi, yes. Through you, Mr. Chair, I can advise that the 60-meter radius was circulated correctly and the information was sent to all the city councilors.
All right. I don't think we need to incur the cost of another recirculation, Ms. Porter, since all the neighbors are aware of it. You've heard from committee staff that the councilors were notified and have been notified. So I think what we'll do is we will, as we've discussed with Ms. Daou, the 20th of October is the earliest date we can have this back on the agenda. And frankly, I think that is the right way to go. Mr. Wilder?
Once again, Ms. Daou, I would strongly encourage you to meet with the abutting property owner. I've certainly got some concerns in terms of what they've raised, and I'd like you to try and resolve those as best you can. Make me some modifications to your design. In any case, I'll support the the adjournment, but certainly I think further discussion is most definitely required. Thank you.
Right. All in favor of adjourning this application until the 20th of October? Application is adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks.
Next application, which is up for adjournment today, is item 6 on the agenda, 297 Clemau, and this is an adjournment request from the applicants. Mr. Frank is the applicants. Can you hear me, Mr. Frank?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, your address for the record, please.
My address is 297 Clemau Ave.
Okay, and the reason for your request for adjournment on this application?
I'm not able to attend today's session beyond these adjournment requests. I'm operating today, unfortunately, and my wife, the other property owner, is on call. I'm not available.
And I think if you've been listening in, the earliest we can deal with this application would be the 20th of October.
Yeah, I can accommodate that date. That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah. For just out of curiosity, we're seeing we've received anecdotal evidence from neighbors that the parking space that you're requesting to install is already in place in front of your building. Is that correct?
We've done some landscaping in front of our house. We are not parking a car there. We're seeking, as you can see, a variance to be able to park a car there. We have done some landscaping, including some hardscaping out front of our house.
And that hardscaping would include place to park a car?
Potentially.
Potentially, yes or no?
Yes, potentially would include a place to park.
So I think you have an issue with the city of Ottawa regarding this. And quite frankly, we'd like to see that resolved when this comes back before us on the 20th of October. So I'd suggest strongly that you talk to the appropriate city staff and get this item straightened out before then. And we will adjourn. All in favor of adjourning this application until the 20th of October? So we will adjourn until the 20th of October, but I strongly suggest that you get this issue resolved before that date. Thank you. All right. Next application up for adjournment is item number 7, 1082 Wellington Street West. And the request has come in from the Hintonburg Community Association. I believe it's Ms. Hode who authored the letter.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Hode.
Yes, my name is Linda Hode. I'm the co-chair of the Hintonburg Community Association Zoning Committee, and my address is 1000 Wellington Street West. We have tried to contact the owners to set up a meeting with the neighbors. I did contact the agent, and he passed along the request, he told me, but we haven't heard from them, so we'd request an adjournment. We had hoped it would be for 2 weeks, but I understand it could only be October the 20th, so that we can hold a meeting with the applicant and the neighbors who will be impacted by this development.
Has there been any public consultation with the community association and the neighbors on this application?
No.
To this point?
None at
There's
all.
no reach out whatsoever.
No, I reached out.
As you know, the committee does not have the authority to require this. However, we do strongly suggest that happens. The agent for this application, thank you, Ms. Hode. The application is Michael Wright. Mr. Wright, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
You've heard from the community association regarding an adjournment to so that the discussion on your applicants.
Yes, they said they had a meeting on the 14th last night. We've received nothing in writing from the community association what the concerns are or have been in regards to this application. I said, because I was asked, well, just adjourn it. I said, well, I just can't tell the client to adjourn it without getting some reasons from the community association as to why such would be put forward. But as of this date, I'd heard nothing from them other than the initial statement.
A lack of consultation from the applicant or the agent with the community association and the abutting neighbors is certainly a reason for us to contemplate granting an adjournment so that kind of discussion can take place, Mr. Wright.
Well, they didn't raise any issues, Mr. Chairman, before the meeting, and they're just saying, well, just adjourn it. And I said, well, when's your meeting and what are your issues? I got no response on that. And my opinion is that this application is really dealing with a commercial piece of property, and the owners in nearby, I don't think would have any issues with the application.
Well, we don't know that because there hasn't been any consultation.
Well, they have to offer what they think is a problem. They receive nothing.
But your applicant, you folks haven't reached out to the neighbors or the community association, Mr. Wright, have you? I
had no response to the neighbors. The owner hasn't. It was only the community association at the last moment that raised the question of adjournment. But none of the neighbors had raised any issues.
All right. Ms. Plain?
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Wright.
Mr. Chair, it's our normal policy or practice, I would say, to grant an adjournment request from either side. So I will be supporting the request for an adjournment.
Yeah. Myself as well. All in favor of adjourning this application until the earliest we can get it on is the 20th of October, 2021. All in favor of adjourning the application? The application is adjourned. Thank you. Next application up for adjournment is item 14 on the agenda, 594 Queen Elizabeth Driveway. And this request has come from the planning department. Mr. Hamilton.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff are requesting an adjournment to further discuss the proposal with the applicant. We are looking to revise the existing variances and add additional ones. We also will require further information about the proposed terrace and tree impacts before we can properly evaluate the plans.
So there's But as far as the department's concerned, there will be additional variances needed.
Most likely.
Mr. Marinelli is the agent for the applicant. Is he there?
Oh. Yes, I'm here, sorry.
All right, to the adjournment request from the department, Mr. Marinelli, please. I can't hear you, sir. Staff discussed this an adjournment request with the applicant's agent.
We did leave, or we did call the applicant's office or the agent's office, sorry, and leave emails with them. They do have two agents, or did have two agents at the time, but we did not receive a response.
Still waiting to hear from the agents. Don't see him there. Obviously lost connection. No. I think we should proceed with the adjournment request. Anyway, Mr. Wildman.
I was just going to suggest that I'm looking at the list, Mr. Chair, on the panelists, and he's gone. I suppose he has technical difficulties. Maybe you want to deal with the next one on the list and come back and see if he's there, just to give him the opportunity to speak if he so chooses.
Stand it down for a few minutes.
Sure.
Okay. We'll do that. We'll call it back in a few. Next item up for adjournment is items number 16 and 17 on the agenda. 415, 417, 413, 14, 13A, 413B, 415A, 415B, 417A, and 417B Tweedsmuir Avenue. And this is a request again from the planning department, because they've indicated there are additional variances required.
That is correct, Mr. Chair. We are looking to include additional variances, as the variances that we are looking at right now are not applicable, as there is no severance requiring them.
Okay. I believe Ms. Hill is the applicant's agent.
Yes. We're okay with the adjournment. So I would like to say on the record, it's time that the city hires more planners to help with this process, because they now have a bylaw that's so complex. It's an enormous amount of effort for people like Mr. Hamilton, who's doing a fantastic job. But it's really unfortunate for us to be in a situation like this where more variances are required or different interpretations of process are coming up at this last minute.
Yeah. Your concerns are noted, Ms. Hill. And you're not the first one to make a comment, as you know. All right. So I guess we will adjourn this application, sine die. All in favor of adjourning the application, sine die? Thank you. It's adjourned. All right. Is Mr. Marinelli back yet? Obviously not. Okay. All right. Well, we'll start with the regular agenda and come back to that adjournment request. Yeah. First application on the regular agenda, items 2 and 3. 366, 362 Fullerton Avenue. They consent to subdivide the property into two separate parcels of land in order to establish separate ownerships for the existing two-story semi-detached dwelling, and minor variances to permit reduced side yard setbacks. And the agent for this application is Mr. Robinson.
Yeah.
Mr. Robinson, before we begin, the oath or declaration, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do swear that to be true.
Okay. Committee's reviewed your application. You have anything to add to what was presented to us?
No.
Okay. You're aware of the conditions, Mr. Robinson. Independent services confirmed, joint use and maintenance agreement, party wall confirmed, and the submission of a grading and drainage plan.
Yes, I am.
Okay. And the committee would also like to impose a further condition of tying the variances to the life of the building.
That's fine.
All right. No objections from any of the neighbors, and the planning department is happy with the application. So with that, all in favor of approving the application as provided to us? Your application is approved. Thank you very much. Good luck with your project.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Mr. Chair, I will say that Mr. Marinelli is back online.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Marinelli, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right.
Sorry.
And to the department's request.
Yes, yeah, we accept the request for adjournment.
Okay, so you're okay with it?
Yep.
All right, so we're going to adjourn. We'll adjourn this sine die.
Okay, thanks.
All in favor of adjourning the application sine die? Application's adjourned. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
All right. Next application before us today is application number 5. This is 401 Chapel Street. It's a minor variance to permit a reduced lot area. It is proposed to add a 3rd-story secondary dwelling unit to the existing 2-story detached dwelling, where the lot area is non-compliant with the zoning bylaw. And agent for this application is Mr. Hamel. Is he there?
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, panel members.
Your address for the record, please, Mr. Hamel.
My address is 170 Main Street, Ottawa.
Okay. And before we begin, I have to administer the oath. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
Yes, we did receive a photograph that was sent to us, posted to us on the day that the sign was required to be mounted.
All right. Do you have anything further to add to the application materials that we received?
Not if you received our PDFs, no.
We have the full package. Any questions from the members regarding this application? Okay. This is pretty straightforward, Mr. Hamel. I don't have any questions either. There are no conditions. Your standard comment from Hydro. Contact Hydro for more information regarding servicing and clearances. You're aware of that, no doubt.
Yes, I am.
Okay. With that, all in favor of approving the application as submitted. Your application is approved. Good luck with your project, Mr. Hamel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Have a good day.
We shall. We are. All right. Next application is before us today. It's item number 8, 357 Dominion Avenue. This is a minor variance to permit a reduced lot area. It's proposed to demolish the existing dwelling and to construct a 3-story, 3-unit dwelling. And we have Messrs. West and Chown as agents for the applicant, and three nearby residents who also wish to speak to the application. So who's going to present on behalf of the applicant?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. I'll be presenting today.
Okay, all right, Mr. West. Very briefly, please. We've gone over your submission. It's very complete.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, we need the sworn oath, please.
Yes, I know. Reminded myself. Somebody hit me. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I swear.
Okay. So briefly, Mr. West, please.
Thank you. I'll ask the Committee of Adjustment Coordinator to put out the presentation, please. Perfect. Thank you so much. So if you can switch to the next slide, please. Excellent. Thank you. So the application we're hearing this afternoon is application for minor variance on the property municipally known as 357 Dominion Avenue. Subject property is shown on the figure in front of you in relation to the Ottawa River to the west, the existing Dominion BRT station to the north, the future Kitchissippi LRT station to the north, and Richmond Road as well as its associated amenities to the south. Switch to the next slide, please. So the slide in front of you shows the survey plan of subject property. It's an interior lot with an area of 273.3 meters squared, has 13.1 meters of frontage along Dominion Avenue. Yeah, switch to the next slide, please. Thank you. So the slide in front of you shows the site plan for the proposed triplex. The proposed triplex will be fully compliant with the requirements of the zoning bylaw save for lot area. The rear yard setback is compliant. The rear yard area is compliant. The interior side yard setbacks are both compliant, and the front yard setback is compliant with the zoning bylaw. The height is also compliant with the zoning bylaw. If you switch to the next slide, please. So the slide in front of you shows the requested minor variance on a sketch. As you can see, the only variance that we've requested relates to lot area. This was actually the original sketch submitted with the application, does not include the slightly amended variance. If you could switch to the next slide, please. So in conversations with the Committee of Adjustment staff, we've actually amended the variance based off what we originally applied for. Originally, we applied for a reduced lot area of 272.4. This was consistent with the area using Geo-Ottawa, and we've actually since checked the area with the surveyor and have amended it accordingly. So if I'll now speak to the rationale for the test for minor variance. The first test for minor variance is in general intent and purpose. The official plan is maintained. Subject properties designated general urban area on Schedule B of the City of Ottawa official plan. The purpose of this designation is to permit, quote, the development of a full range and choice of housing types to meet the needs of all ages, incomes, and life circumstances. Further, section 3.6.1 also outlines that the city supports infill development and other intensification within the general urban area in a manner that enhances and complements the desirable characteristics and ensures the long-term vitality of many existing communities that make up the city. Policy 5 of section 2.2 of the official plan states that, quote, the city supports intensification of the general urban area where it will complement the existing pattern and scale of development, and the predominant form of development intensification will be semi-detached and other ground-oriented multiple unit housing. The proposed development of the subject property is an example of infill intensification in the urban area that is consistent with the existing character of the community in the neighborhood. Proposed triplex is an appropriate form of ground-oriented housing and intensification. I'll now speak to the second test of the for minor variance, as it maintains the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. The subject property is zoned R3S under the City of Ottawa zoning bylaw. Purpose of the R3S, excuse me, the R3 zone is to allow a mix of residential building forms ranging from detached dwellings to townhouse dwellings in areas designated general urban area, and to allow a number of other residential uses to provide additional housing choices within the third density residential areas. So the requested minor variance is actually to facilitate a triplex, which is a permitted use under the R3 zoning. As I previously stated, the proposed development meets the performance standards for lot width, height, front yard setback, front yard landscaping, interior side yard setback, rear yard setback, rear yard area. The projections of the proposed developments also meet the requirements of the zoning bylaw, and the setbacks of the proposed development have been designed to reduce any impact of massing on adjacent properties. The proposed variance does not result in any greater impacts than what is permitted as of right. I'll speak a bit to the height now. The maximum permitted height of a triplex is slightly larger than what is permitted as a duplex. This slight increase in height from a triplex to a duplex helps to develop a livable space for the third unit, which is permitted under the zoning bylaw. The proposed minor variance seeks some reduction in the minimum required lot area only. The intent of the required lot area provision is to ensure there is adequate room in the property to accommodate a livable triplex and ensure the lot has adequate amenities. Proposed development has sizable living spaces for each unit. It meets the zoning bylaw requirement for front yard setback, landscaping, rear yard landscaping. The intent of the minimum lot area provision is to minimize the impact of the streetscape, and the proposed reduction in lot area is unperceivable from the street. I'll now speak to the third test, which is considered desirable. Proposed development supports intensification while having regard for existing uses, built form, and lot fabric. If I could ask you to switch to the next slide, please. Thank you. So the proximity of the subject property to the existing and planned transit infrastructure is shown on the figure in front of you. Intensification is supported by the availability of transit services in the area. It's approximately 95 meters away from the existing Dominion station. And the Dominion station hosts a whole assortment of bus routes. I'm not going to list them all because we don't have the time, unfortunately. The Dominion Bus Rapid Transit Station provides access to convenience services ranging to Stittsville, Canada, Bayshore, Bell's Corners, Tunney's Pasture, Barhaven, Centerpoint. Subject property is also located approximately 88 meters from the future Kitchissippi Light Rail Station, which will be a connecting transit station providing east-west light rail services. I'll ask you to switch to the next slide, please. So the slide in front of you shows the proximity of the subject property to several amenities, including Richmond Road, Churchill Main Street, Churchill Public School, Blythe Academy, Lions Park, etc. So as you can see on the image in front of you, the subject property is in an excellent location with respect to existing amenities and public schools. The requested variance permits a smaller lot area for a triplex, and allowing for a smaller lot area promotes intensification and fits with the overall character of the neighborhood. I'll now speak to the fourth test. So the requested variance seeks a slight reduction in the lot area. Proposed development meets the performance standards for lot width, front yard setback, landscaping, height, interior side yard, all those requirements of the zoning bylaw. Proposed variance does not result in any greater impact on the adjacent neighbors than what would be permitted as of right. The requested variance for reduced lot area is required due to a shallow depth of the lot. Subject property has a lot depth of 20.8 meters. The subject property had a standard lot depth of 30 meters. Then we wouldn't be seeking a minor variance for lot area. So with an average lot depth, the subject property would not require variance and would enable a triplex as of right. The requested variance to permit a reduced lot area will not affect the functionality of the site and will have no impact on the streetscape. Before I finalize this presentation, I'd like to just discuss a few comments that we've received from the community. With respect to the encroachment agreement that was mentioned in some of the public comments, the redevelopment of the subject property would result in the automatic termination of the encroachment of the window well. And should the application be approved, this concern should be resolved. With respect to trees, municipal staff have confirmed that the proposed development is located outside of the critical root zone of any trees, and a tree information report is not required. With respect to parking, the proposed development meets the parking requirements of the zoning bylaw. I would ask you to switch to the final slide. I believe it's slide number 10. So it's the one right after this. Excellent, thank you. So there's also been some comments regarding the lack of plans for the proposed development. When we submitted the site plan with the application, and we were not required to submit the elevation since the variance only relates to lot area. We'd like to offer the community members of the public a chance to look at the draft elevations for the proposed development. We received inquiries related to balconies in the rear yard. As you can see from these draft elevations, there are no balconies proposed in the rear yard. Actually, balconies in the rear yard are not permitted under the zoning bylaw due to the shallow lot depth of the subject property. So since balconies in the rear yard are not permitted, the rear yard setback meets the requirements of the zoning bylaw, and the rear yard area meets the requirements of the zoning bylaw. Proposed development will not result in any more impact to the privacy of any rear neighbors than what's permitted as of right. So in summary, in closing, the proposed development at 357 Dominion Avenue maintains the general intent and purpose of the City of Ottawa official plan and zoning bylaw. Furthermore, the requested variance is considered desirable for the use of the land and is minor in nature. As all four tests under section 45(1) of the Planning Act have been met, the requested variance represents good land use planning. Thank you.
Mr. West, was there a requirement for a streetscape character analysis to be filed through this application?
Yes, there was, and the I have to pull it up, but the proposed development doesn't require any relief for the streetscape character.
And staff are comfortable with the streetscape character analysis. Everything. This fits within the neighborhood.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And further, Mr. West, you said you circulated the elevations to the abutting neighbors with their comment?
No, I'll let Mr. Chown respond to that question.
Mr. Chair, as Mr. West indicated, because this variance relates, excuse me, only to lot area, we hadn't provided building elevations to the committee or to staff or to the neighbors. We've just shown them today in an effort to address the concern raised with respect to the possibility of balconies and overlook at the back, just to make it clear to the neighbors who are participating in the call and to the members of the committee that there are no balconies, and the relationship between this proposed triplex and all of the abutting property lines and abutting properties are fully compliant with the zoning bylaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chown. Mr. Wilder, any comment?
Mr. Chown, I'm really disappointed. In the past, you at least had the courtesy, notwithstanding, to at least have provided the abutting neighbors with the full plans, notwithstanding the request that you're making. Obviously, there's a number of concerns that could have allayed their fears rather than just throwing up the picture to them today. Just something I just want you to take into account in future, please. That notwithstanding the situation with the variance before us, I still feel it would be appropriate to meet with the budding owners to allay any concerns that they have. We don't have to have the situation of them coming today and having to have their concerns in writing and having an explanation put to them right here at the meeting. Thank you. The other point I have is, it's pointed out that there might be some mature shared trees at the back and the front. Is that the case, or isn't it, Mr. Chown?
There is one tree on the rear property line, which is referenced in the staff report, that will not be impacted by the development. And through the chair, I appreciate the comments. And for the record, we did reach out to the community association, and we've had no feedback from them, but I appreciate that it may have been helpful for us to reach out directly to the immediate neighbors.
Thank you.
Ms. McLean?
I'm just wondered, a question for the city planner or the applicant's agent. The bylaw requirement for 360 square meters, how old is that provision? Like, does that provision reflect the intensification policies in the official plan? Is it a relatively recent bylaw requirement, or is it just an older provision?
I'll weigh in on that, and then I'm sure that city staff will. I think it's a very good question, and my understanding is that that's a provision that's been in the zoning bylaw for decades. And I think, as all the members of the committee appreciate, that the City of Ottawa zoning bylaw has never really been updated to reflect the intensification policies that were adopted way back in 2003. Excellent question, but I believe that standard has been in place for quite some time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chown. Mr. West, nothing further in your presentation? Okay. We have several members of the public who wish to speak to the application. I believe Mr. Garcia, I see on screen.
Good afternoon and thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Your address, please, sir, for the record.
At 355 Dominion Avenue.
Okay. Please proceed.
My wife and I are the owners and actually occupants of the abutting property. I have a series of points, but I have to say that there was no consultation either with just the elevation or at any point over the project or the process. We only found out with the note indicating that there will be a variance hearing. So there has been no conversations with any of the neighbors, and we have actively engaged almost everybody on the street around this property, and no one, as far as we are aware, has been consulted or approached by either the owners or the agents for this project. So we wanted to say that we are actually fairly active participants in everything that has had to do with consultations on by the City of Ottawa regarding the secondary plan for the area, the infill development plan, as well as the recently released primary development plan. And as early as just before COVID, we were involved in the discussions with city staff about the infill development plan. So I'm not a municipal planner, but we are fairly familiar with what was expected for intensification on the area. Our expectation has always been that this property 357 will be developed within the existing plans, bylaws, and in accordance with the expected intensification earmarked for this area. The not so minor variance that is being requested today will allow the construction of 3 dwellings in an area that is barely the minimum size that the current plans will allow the construction of a duplex, so only 2 dwellings. They are requesting 3 dwellings in an area that is 25% smaller than that will be required for a triplex according to R3S zoning. So my question to the committee, Mr. Chairman, is why will a 25% smaller lot, so 272 meters versus 360, be granted permission to build 3 dwellings? Even though at this time they have answered most of the questions that we had at the beginning, indicating that there will be no other variances, it is still a fairly small lot, and we have seen the past examples in which an initial minor variance has been granted, and then they start expanding on other variances towards the sides, the back, and the front. A recent example is Tweedsmuir, which is just a few blocks from us, in which a triplex was allowed and later it developed into a 4-unit building. Or the next item on your agenda, in which variances are being discussed to allow for 0 meters setbacks, whereas 3.5 or 7.5 meters have been asked. I understand that the agents today did provide an elevation which we didn't have before, but the current triplex will actually be 2.7 meters higher than the houses all around that property. And even though they don't have balconies at the rear windows will overlook the backyards and the rooftops of the neighborhood houses. All of the neighborhood houses are relatively narrow footprints, so they use the outside space as much as they can. Very small backyards, very small rooftops, but still, we will have a building that is one whole floor taller than we are, overlooking our basically our inner space. Then the character of the street, I understand the city staff just said that it's in character with the street. I'm not sure if you have walked the street, but everything is either single homes or duplexes in narrow lots. And there is very few, there is recent construction, including 377 Dominion Avenue, which is still a narrow lot. And most of the area is duplexes. To my knowledge, as I said, there has been realistically no consultation performed at this time. I am requesting from you, Mr. Chairman, and the committee that this minor variance not granted and that the parcel be developed in line with the current City of Ottawa plans and bylaws and in line with what the City of Ottawa has presented to the local residents as expectations for development of the infield for the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We also have Ms. Robinson, who was on the speakers list. Another neighbor. Is she there?
Good afternoon. This is Ann Robinson speaking. I'm going to apologize. I'm in my car at the moment, and certainly I can see a request for video. I'm going to stay safe. My address is 360 Berkeley Avenue, and I am kitty corner at the rear to the property under consideration. I echo everything Dr. Garcia just mentioned. In addition to that, we did have questions about winter and snow clearance and how this new property would be able to accommodate areas for snow, given that several of us are already challenged during those times of year. But I appreciate everything that's been discussed so far, and I will echo Dr. Garcia's comments that none of us have been consulted other than receiving the notification of this variance conversation around the changes at the property.
And just for your information, it is not within the committee's purview or this process to demand consultation. We only suggest consultation. And I just, as a property owner who can develop his land, if I was developing my property without a variance, then I don't need to consult with my neighbors either. I mean, that's the way it works, unfortunately, in the city of Ottawa. You just file your plans with Building Code Services, with the planning department, and proceed. And the neighbors basically find out when the demolition permit goes up or the building permit goes up. So it's not a perfect process for sure. And I know I understand how it is frustrating for people living in neighborhoods that get a variance request. And there has been no consultation from the applicant or the agent, which we strongly suggest takes place, but it is not necessary. Again, it's not. We don't have the final say on that. It's up to the agent and the applicant and their agent to do so. Anyway, anything further, Ms. Robinson?
Nothing further from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We also have, I believe, it's Mr. Palanchika, I believe, if I'm not totally bumbling the last name. It was on the list. At 362 Berkeley.
Mr. Chair, she doesn't seem to be online.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chown, Mr. West, you've heard comments from neighbors. Would you like to comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll be very brief. I think the committee is intimately familiar with this neighborhood. All of the lots within the crescent defined by Berkeley Avenue and Dominion are very shallow. And so although this lot fully conforms in terms of lot width, and so in terms of walking down the street and seeing a building erected on this property that fully conforms, you wouldn't know that it's a shallow lot. But because they're all shallow lots, you've seen applications time and time and again before this committee to seek relief with respect to lot area. In fact, I'm intimately familiar with the development that Dr. Garcia lives in. We were the planners on record that filed the applications with the Committee of Adjustment for the severances and minor variances for the semi-detached dwelling that he lives in. And I'll go on record as saying, I think I set a record for the number of variances that were required for that project. My recollection is it was in excess of 30 variances for the 4 units that ultimately were constructed.
I remember it. I remember it well. I was on committee at that time.
I thought you might. And so, what we're asking for isn't out of character in terms of the historic development that's occurred on these 2 streets. I do apologize for not reaching out to the immediate neighbors. It's disappointing that the community association didn't respond to us. But I endorse everything Mr. West has said to you. What's being asked here in terms of what is the purpose and intent of the zoning bylaw will allow for a triplex that otherwise is fully conforming to the zoning bylaw, and we'd encourage the committee to grant the variance as requested, and subject to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Chow. Mr. Wildman, you had comments, questions?
Thank you, Chair. There were when Mr. West was going through the 4 tests, he did have some aerial views when he was talking about compatibility and context and what have you. Just wondering, and then Mr. Chow just mentioned some context as well. Do you have any examples that might help the committee to see where within the area something like this has been done, Mr. Chow or Mr. West?
I don't think our package includes an example of the lot fabric, but as I say, there have been numerous applications within this block for reduced lot areas because the lot depths, particularly on Dominion, are so much shallower. I know that we had applications immediately south of this property on Dominion with the exact same issue.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Oakshire, you had a comment or question?
Thank you. I was wondering if the planning department could maybe respond to the comments of the residents who say that this development is not in line with the local character on that street or in that immediate area, as they have indicated that they have no concerns with this project.
Yes, Miss Oakshire. So I don't have answer about the compatibility in the neighborhood, but due to the fact that the property, the proposed development meets all the other performance standards for the subzone, we have no concerns with this significant reduction in lot area. Thank you. Hope it answers your question.
Any further, Ms. Oakshire?
It does answer my question to some degree, but I do wonder about the overall impact of this project on a reduced lot. So I am considering that.
Okay, all right. Mr. Wilder?
Mr. Chow, did your client, like further up the street, 377, 379, did your client consider putting up, in fact, the duplex? And if it would be a duplex, how would this differ in terms of coverage and in terms of additional amenity space, for example, and especially on a tight lot, as opposed to putting in the 3-unit?
With respect, Mr. Wilder, I think the answer to that question is a duplex would have the exact same footprint and would provide the exact same amount of amenity space because it would be providing the same setback requirements as the triplex.
Thank you.
Anything further, Mr. Wilder? No, okay. Mr. Garcia, very briefly. Can't hear you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate Mr. Chow's comments, but as he said, there are multiple examples of reduced lots variances, which we are not opposing if this was a duplex. But he didn't mention any examples about increased height in this street, the street behind, or the next one. And this is one of the main points for us, is the increased height compared to the existing newer properties, which are in itself
However, that height,
increasing
they're not, there's no variance for height here. That building
No,
as proposed is within the bylaw requirements.
But a triplex will be higher than the current duplexes in the area. So you will have basically taller building in the middle of landscape that is basically a whole story shorter than what a triplex would be. As I said, we're not opposing any development next to us. The neighbors are opposing something that is higher and not in line with what is currently in the street.
Yeah, understood. Okay. All right. Any other further comments or questions from the members of the panel? Mr. Wildman?
Chair, I'd just like to recommend we consider reserving on this.
I was going to say that we should reserve on this application for the discuss. All right. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your input. We obviously understand the concerns of the neighbors, and it certainly would have been helpful had there been some pre-consultation on this application, even though it's not a legislative requirement. Anyway, we're going to reserve on this application, and our notice of decision will be available. Will be released in 10 days. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair.
The next applications we will deal with today are items 9 and 10. 846 Celeron Boulevard, 571 Mutual Street. Is your consent to subdivide property into two separate lots to construct a two-story detached dwelling with a single attached garage on the proposed separate lot and a new detached garage on the retained lot. The existing dwelling is to remain on the retained lot while the detached garage, shed, and framed wood deck are to be demolished. And there are also minor variants to permit a reduced interior side yard setback along the western property line. It's proposed to subdivide the property into two separate lots, construct a two-story detached dwelling. The agent for this application, this is Mr. Dolermente. Is he there? I can't hear you, sir.
Yes, this is Santos Dolormente.
Your address for the record, please.
I live in 100 Hillman Mars Way, Northwood.
Okay. Before we begin, I have to administer the oath of solemn declaration. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time? Okay. Before we begin, the committee has a question for planning staff regarding setbacks. Obviously the reduced setback on the western property line is one of the requests for relief. Does the setback on the eastern side meet the requirements of the bylaw?
It is.
I'm not asking you, sir. I'm asking staff. Perhaps while we're waiting for staff, you can proceed with your presentation, sir.
Our application is to sever a lot. This is the subject property is located in 846 Salura.
Yep.
And we were severing a lot. The retained portion will be it's an existing building, it's existing house to be retained, and the severed lot will be the proposed two-story building. And the zoning bylaws ask for 3 meters side yard setback on the western side, and we're asking for 1.2 meters. The zoning bylaw also doesn't have any minimum area required, and all the zoning requirements we comply except the westerly boundary property line.
You have any graphics you can put up that shows us the location, size of the proposed building?
Should be the next one. This one.
Okay.
This will be the proposed building, a 2-story, and then this is the detached garage will belong to the existing house. And this will be the new property line in between.
Okay. Did you submit any elevations so that we can determine what this is going to look like?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Next, please.
Okay. Okay. All right. So that's what you intend to build on the severed lot.
That's correct.
Okay. Have staff determined the requirement for the western side yard or the eastern side yard?
Yes, Mr. Chair, sorry, I lost connection. So the interior side yard setback is required only from residential zone, not in any other cases. So the other setback is compliant.
Only in a residential zone.
Yeah.
All right.
Only abutting residential zone. Yes.
Okay. I think it was Ms. McLean that had that question, was it not?
Yes, thank you. That satisfies my question. Thank you.
Please proceed, sir. Thank you, Ms. McKeel. You don't have to, if you would like to proceed, please, with your application.
We also have a tree information report, which is the 3 trees existing are far from the proposed footprint. As we also submitted a sketch showing the measurements from the existing tree to the proposed footprint of the new house.
So how does this application satisfy the 4 tests of the Planning Act?
This satisfies the 4 tests. It's the approval of the application is consistent with the provincial policy statement. And number 2 is the approval of the draft plan of subdivision is consistent with the regularity controls in the section 5124 of the Planning Act. And the approval of the application is in conformity with the City of Ottawa official plan. And the proposed development and its minor variances are in general compliance with the City of Ottawa standards. And the proposed development is an appropriate use of land and is compatible with the adjacent land uses.
You said it complies with the official plan. How so?
And because of the intensification of the area.
And how are we to determine that this application is minor?
We are only, Mr. Chairman, we are only asking for 1.2 meters for the setback, and this is normal for every residential units.
So this application is in your position is this request is the variance application is not too large to be considered not minor, and
Yes.
you don't feel that there's going to be any impact on the abutting neighbors in the neighborhood because of this application?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And how do you consider that this application meets the requirement to be desirable and or appropriate use or development of the land?
Because it recognized the importance of the new development relating to the existing community character, so that enhances and builds upon desirable established plat patterns in the built form of the area.
Okay. All right. And the department's comfortable with this application, I take it?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have no concerns.
Okay. Right. You're aware that there are a number of, oh, Mr. Wildman, you had a question or comment?
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if this is the right time, but there was and I think you may have been just going there, but with respect to the comment about the AC unit, if
Yes.
that could be pursued, please.
Was it this application? I don't believe so.
You may be correct, Mr. Chair. One moment.
Nope. It's another application.
Further down the list. Yeah, I was just going by memory. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
That's all right. All right. I'll just read off the conditions that we're going to impose today. You need cash and there's a cash in lieu requirement. You have a tree planting plan, you said.
Yes.
Independent services confirmed. The accessory structure must be demolished or relocated. Existing structure straddling the proposed severance line has been demolished in accordance with the demolition permit. You have to provide that. You need to provide a grading and drainage plan and a noise attenuation study given their proximity to Celeron Boulevard. We'd also, I believe, are going to impose a condition that the approval of the minor variances are conditional on the consent being granted. Okay, you're aware of Hydro Ottawa's comments with the owner that you're required to cover all expenses required for electrical supply.
Yes, we are, Mr. Chair.
And that you need to contact them servicing and clearances. And you'll also need from the right-of-way people, you'll need a private approach permit for the new driveway.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any comments, questions from the other members of the panel regarding this application? Are we prepared to grant the application with the addition of that one condition? All in favor of the application? Your application's approved. Good luck with your project.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and all the panels.
Thank you. All right. Next application before us today is number 11 at 22 Sims Avenue. It's minor variances to permit a reduced lot area and rear yard setback, a reduced rear yard area and habitable first floor area, and a reduced setback from the exterior front wall of the rooftop terrace access. It's also proposed to demolish the existing detached dwelling and construct a new 3-story long semi-detached dwelling. There are a number of concerns regarding this application from neighbors. There's also comments that have come in from the Hintonburg Community Association. The agent for the application is Ms. Dabu again. Is she there? There you are. And once again, we have to go through the solemn oath or declaration. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I affirm.
Okay. So very briefly, Ms. Daou, we've gone through your very comprehensive report, so we're well aware of the application.
Okay, perfect. So I do have a presentation prepared if the committee.
As long as it's short. 'cause like I said,
It wasn't super short, but I will try to shorten that up a bit, and perhaps I'll just go straight next to the site plan, which shows the overall site layout. So as you know, this is a proposed development of a long semi-detached dwelling, which is a permitted use for the zoning of the site. We're requesting to permit this development 5 variances to the zoning bylaw, the first being a reduction in lot area. As you know, this is a very sort of tight-knit lot fabric in this community. So the reduction would be of approximately 40 meters squared to permit the development of a long semi. The lot does meet the requirements for lot width, so there's no variance required for that, and all setback provisions are being complied with, save and except the rear yard setback variance requested. So I will speak to that. As you can see by the site plan here, it's an angled front and rear lot lines, which absolutely creates a development challenge. In order to comply with the front yard setback requirements and provide adequate soft landscaping in the front, the east front corner has been set back slightly further than the required front yard setback. And as a result, the east corner of the rear of the building has been set back further towards the rear lot line. As you can see in this image, I think it highlights quite well in the red shading. This is the only portion of the building that's actually going to be within the requested relief area. So it's actually only approximately 45% of that requested relief area, which will contain a building footprint. So we do believe that that is a minor encroachment. It also allows for the provision of an interior parking space. So this street has been identified as having some parking challenges and congestion on the street. So the owners do want to provide enough space for 2 cars, one for each unit, to be provided on the site. So there's been a design introduction of an interior facing garage for the front dwelling, and then the interior side yard parking for the rear dwelling. So in order to incorporate that garage while also meeting the required first floor habitable area for the rear unit, the dwelling has been pushed back into that rear yard slightly. Rear yard area reduction is only by less than 5 meters squared, and there's of course still ample opportunity for soft landscaping. The trees that are in the rear will not be impacted by development and will be protected during construction. Speaking to the first floor habitable area reduction, again, that's to allow for the incorporation of an interior garage. So rather than introducing a front facing garage, the parking is nicely hidden behind the front area and living space of the dwelling, and all of the first floor habitable space will be facing the street to provide active street animation. There will be focus on windows, front porch, and so forth. Just trying to make sure I'm not missing anything. I'll go to the next slide. This just shows the front and rear elevations. The proposal does meet the height requirements under the zoning bylaw for both the building itself and the rooftop terrace access. You can see in the rear yard, there is a balcony in the rear, but this is located within the area of the rear yard that's not within the required relief area, so as to ensure there's no overlook concerns into the neighboring properties' rear yards. The next slide will show the side elevations. Again, within the requested relief area of the rear yard, there is no window. It's set back within the permitted rear yard setback area. And the next slide, we can skip that one again. Perfect. So this is the roof plan. So the final variance that would be required would be a relief from the required provision that the rooftop access be set back a distance equal to its height from the front exterior wall of the building. So the rooftop access is 2.44 meters tall. So therefore that would be the required setback from the front wall. Unfortunately, given the front to back layout of the dwelling units, it wasn't possible to push it back further. So this has been designed so that a very minimal portion of that access is closer to the front wall, with the remaining portion being set back actually further than required under the zoning. And then the area, which is the primary access point with the door, is located towards the interior of the building, and all other components of the terrace do comply with zoning requirements. Given this is a front to back long semi, we felt it was important in this neighborhood to introduce outdoor amenity space for both units. Of course, the rear unit will have exclusive use of the rear yard, so we felt it would be important to incorporate this terrace space for future residents of the front unit.
You understand that one of the nearby neighbors had concerns regarding the rooftop patio.
Yes. So we've received 2 comments from the neighbors, one from the immediate neighbor, and the owners have been very proactive with their discussions. They approached that particular neighbor to discuss those concerns again just last evening after receiving the letter. The owners also went door to door to, I believe, 10 of the neighboring properties and delivered notices to the properties that are located to the south along that, oh gosh, I'm now forgetting what street that is. But anything abutting the rear yard as well, they were approached. And we did also present to the community association. They invited us to present. And so we were involved in that discussion as well for any neighbors with questions and concerns.
Have the issues regarding that emanated from the owners of 20 Sims Avenue been dealt with?
My understanding that
that's immediate next door neighbor.
Yes, so my understanding is that they had a very productive discussion. I'm not sure if that neighbor is on the call today or not, if they wanted to speak to anything further.
No, they're not.
Okay, so my understanding is that they left on very amicable terms. I don't think that she had any remaining concerns, but I can't speak for her, of course. But the owners identified that it was a very productive discussion, and I think that it helped to appease her through that discussion last night.
And you've seen the comment from the Hintonburg Community Association?
Yes, so that would be in reference to the air conditioning unit. So, so we did discuss this with the project designer, and perhaps you want to bring up the site plan again. Sorry, just so we can refer back to it. So the AC unit is located basically directly adjacent to the 20 Sims. It's an exterior access to their dwelling. They are willing to move it closer to Sims, but unfortunately it has to be along this property line just due to the location of the laneway on the west side of the property. So it does have to be located on the east. There is going to be a proposed fence along the east property line, so that will help to mitigate any potential concerns with noise stemming from that AC unit.
What about a noise mitigation enclosure built around that air conditioning unit?
We haven't discussed that.
This is new construction.
Correct. Yeah. So we haven't discussed that as an option, but I am sure that the owners will be absolutely happy to.
Frankly, I think you should, because this is not a zoning issue, as Mr. Wildman said, which is why the planning department hasn't dealt with it, but it is a noise bylaw issue. And that air conditioning unit's almost on the property line. And the maximum you're allowed to generate is 55 decibels at point of reception. Quietest AC units, and I have one of them, that are sold right now are around 71 decibels. So it's something I think your owner should seriously consider, actually, for both of them. Noise is an issue in this town, and especially when you've got this kind of a configuration with infill development. These items or these issues can be dealt with before they become a noise bylaw issue, and bylaw officers are phoned.
Understood. And the project designer, I believe, is actually on the line. So I personally haven't discussed the type of AC unit, but I am certain that he has discussed it with the owners. But we are certainly happy to comply. Well, of course, we'll comply with all of the requirements. And it's definitely possible that, I'm not sure if Justin Segay, who's the project designer.
This really isn't before us. I'm just noting it. And
okay, great.
As far as the design requirement to put an enclosure around that, I don't believe there are any provisions in any piece of legislation the city has that says you have to do that, with the exception of HVAC units up on the roof of commercial and residential buildings. That has to be enclosed. So that's something your owner needs to consider. Mr. Wildman, you had a question or a comment?
Yes, Mr. Chair, and now we're on the right application. Just that fence that's all along that side, Mr. Au, how high is that proposed to be?
Justin, could you speak to that? Justin Segay, he's the designer. He has the fence detailing. I apologize, I don't know offhand.
Oh, can everyone hear me? Yep. Yeah, so the fence would likely be 5 feet on that side. Not so much that it causes too much of a shadow, but still provides privacy at 5 feet. And
is that a sandwich board fence?
We don't have the exact specifics on the pure detailing of the fence to this point yet, but we would be happy to accommodate what the neighbors
Because
would like
if it's board on board, it doesn't stop a lot of noise. Or like
no, the fence would be more of a privacy application, and
that's
we would like to provide an enclosure for the AC unit in order to dampen some of the sound transfer to the neighboring units.
I think the owners next door would appreciate that.
Yeah, Chair, just one last question. Do you know, is the AC unit going to be mounted or will it be at grade?
It would be at grade in this case.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Wilder, you had a comment? Question?
Yes, Mr. Hu, I'm not at all pleased with this development, to be honest with you. I find it's out of scale. Do you have a streetscape analysis? I'm looking at the abutting properties now with their pitched roofs, and I'm looking how this infill is at a scale. Now, I understand we're dealing with rear yard setbacks here, but is it really necessary? You know, it's a tight site and you're trying to squeeze everything on here. A little bit of green space, make sure the upper tenant's happy, trying to squeeze those parking spaces in as well, which I don't think is a requirement or necessary. And, you know, certainly the design in my mind does not fit with the character necessarily of the street or certainly what's adjacent to these properties. Personally, I think it's slightly overdevelopment, trying to put too much on this site with the parking, landscaping at the back, having to put the terrace balcony on the top to create that terrace balcony. Can we just see the photo again of, I've seen your photos here, the photo of the actual structure with the two adjacent properties. If the administrator coordinator can please put that up and show us. Should there be, I think, some photographs of the abutting properties?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, there is a slide that does have, I think that would be a helpful slide. So the immediate abutting properties are, you can see these located at the bottom left corner. So both of them are 2-story dwellings. The flat roof design will be roughly in line with midpoint of their peaked roofs based on elevation renderings that we do have as well. And just down the street, there are several examples of 3-story flat roof developments, townhouse developments, as well as semi-detached. These are just down the street from the property. So the proposed design, while it is different than the immediately adjacent properties, I would say is very in line with others that exist currently on the street, while also providing opportunity to hide the garage within the interior of the building, while still giving the perception of being more similar to a single detached dwelling, though it is taller with the flat roof. It does give the perception of being a single detached dwelling in its context, considering there are not 2 front-facing garages. It's tucked in. Just speaking to the parking, though it's not required under the zoning bylaw, we feel in this particular context, and it's been expressed by the community members, that parking is an issue on this street. And by introducing 2 single-family homes, we certainly do not want to add to any parking pressures. Of course, the site is in with close proximity to Highway 417 as well. So we think that this offers a very sensitive solution to providing parking while not overwhelming the streetscape with garages. And then the next slide, I believe, is the renderings. So you can see, pardon me, you can see here how the building will look in its context from both the front and the rear. I hope that somewhat answers.
Ms. Doe, that enclosure, which to me is like considered, in my mind, a 4th story, that enclosure you're needed now to make a stairway basically to provide that additional amenity area. really, in terms of the overall massing of the building, really puts it, even though it may be slightly set back, really puts it out of scale. I mean, I guess that's the only way to access to provide that amenity area. Is that what that structure is on the top floor?
That's correct. So through discussions with the designer, this is the only layout that rooftop access could be placed in order to meet building code requirements for the staircase. And as well, because it's a front to back unit layout, it's pushed back as far as possible with given the interior layout of the building. I think that the massing from these perspectives is a little bit more challenging, just because you can't really tell as much that with the shadowing that's shown on the renderings, that the majority of that access will be set back further than the requirements, and the access is quite a bit under the required maximum heights for rooftop terraces under the zoning as well.
I just find that, again, in terms of the massing and the like, it just seems, and I'm looking now, I realize what else is up the street, but in terms of certainly the abutting property owners, it just doesn't seem to me, in terms of the requirement, certainly for the rear yard, what you're trying to do to accommodate the parking spaces. There'll be 2 parking spaces or 1? There's 2, correct?
2, through you, Mr. Chair, 2 provided. 1 will be along the side, the interior side out of the building for the rear unit, and 1 would be provided through the garage space.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, certainly I can see 1. I don't see why given it's a long semi, we could have provided more amenity area if you just kept it to 1 parking space. Certainly, I think that, well, I don't know. I just feel that what you're requesting here is overdevelopment. That's my feeling. Thank you.
Mr. Wilder's mentioning parking. Did you or have you looked at turning radiuses for that garage in the front unit, so you can determine whether or not a vehicle can make it in and out of there adequately?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the designer has looked at the turning radiuses, and the garage is sufficiently sized to have a vehicle enter and exit the garage space.
Okay, thank you. I think Mr. Hamilton from the city had a comment. I noticed his hand's up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just did have a comment in support of a previous conversation regarding the air conditioning unit. They are captured within the zoning bylaws permitted projections, so they are allowed in the interior side yard, and they are allowed to project 1 meter, but cannot be closer than 0.3 meters to the lot line.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the noise, not the location. Actually, it's both. Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Mr. Wilder?
Yeah. Just one more question, Mr. Are secondary dwelling units being contemplated at all in this long semi?
No secondary dwelling units contemplated, and it's not the owner's intent to include them in the future. These are intended to be family homes.
And they'll be severed in due course, is that correct?
Correct, yes. At such time that the planning department considers the building to be a building, that's when the proposal would proceed with the severance application.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Have we dealt with the 4 tests yet, Mr.
I sort of breezed through my presentation, so I apologize for that. I had it all very clearly laid out.
You can give us the Coles Notes version.
Sure. So without trying to be too disorganized and giving my Coles Notes version, but we feel that in this particular instance, the reduction, considering how shallow this particular lot is, given the context and the angled front lot lines, we feel that the reduction in lot area is minor. It's only a 40-meter reduction, so it's minor numerically, but also given the fact that the building can be designed in its footprint to meet the required setbacks. There's appropriate amenity space in the rear, and there's appropriate landscaping in the front yard provided through incorporation of new street trees. and planting. So we feel the reduction in lot area in this particular instance is minor and meets the 4 tests. I apologize, I kind of had my discussion sort of scattered throughout my presentation notes. In terms of their rear yard setback reduction, again, this would be a minor reduction given the fact that less than half of the actual building footprint will be located within the requested relief area. With the front dwelling reduction at the ground floor level, given the fact that the living space has been oriented towards the street and there is no perceptible garage space from the front unit, we feel that the reduction in first floor habitable space is minor and meets the intent of the zoning bylaw, given the intent would be to activate and animate the streetscape. The roof amenity access, though it is sorry, I'm just pulling this up so I can refer back to the numbers. The majority of the rooftop access does comply with the zoning requirements for the setbacks and actually exceeds that. So the reduction to 1.2 meters just at the front wall, from the front wall to the stair access for that small portion is minor. Further, the introduction of a rooftop terrace in this particular location is appropriate and desirable. It allows for this unit to have usable amenity space outside for future tenants, while also being introduced in a space that is not overlooking the adjacent property's rear yards. The terrace is appropriately set back from the property to the west and to the east, meets zoning requirements as well. Again, with this east portion of the terrace, it is set back exceeding the zoning requirements for the interior side yard setbacks, so even further than that. So we feel that this is an appropriate location to introduce a terrace, especially given it is overlooking the roofs of the adjacent properties as opposed to any of their particular living space. So we feel that the introduction of that particular feature is minor. The introduction of a 2 dwelling unit development within the urban area is of course supported and appropriate given under the official plan policies. We feel that the introduction of 2 units where previously there was 1 is a modest form of infill intensification. As I showed on the example photos just down the street, there are other examples of 3-story flat roof multi-unit buildings. So this building will be similar in design and scale to those. However, it actually offers some improvements considering from the streetscape will appear to be more similar to that of a single detached dwelling with the garages tucked in to the interior. Though parking is not permitted, or sorry, parking is permitted, though parking is not required, we feel that in this particular instance, it is desirable and appropriate to introduce parking spaces for the units. The intended future owners would be families for both units, and we feel that it is very likely that they would have a vehicle, though not, of course, absolutely. We can't say absolutely that they will have a vehicle, but it is probably likely that some future residents may have a vehicle, and so providing access to a parking space and removing pressures on street parking is, of course, desirable for the development of this site. Again, no secondary dwelling units are proposed, so there will not be a significant increase in the density provided on this site. So I hope I've touched on everything, but given those components, I do believe that it meets the 4 tests under the Planning Act.
Thank you, Ms. Oakshire. You had a comment or a question?
Thank you. Just one question for Ms. Dow. I'm looking for better perspective on that turning radius for the parking spot that is the interior parking spot. Just wondering if you have any additional sketches that, not from above and not what you've shown us from the front, but just something that has better perspective on the functionality of that space.
Sure. If I could, I would like to turn this question as well to Justin Segay, who is much more familiar with the functionality of the garage space and the turning radiuses. I unfortunately don't have a sketch that I have provided. Perhaps he can address it verbally.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to. So for the turning radius on site, we still have over 3¼ meters distance from the edge of that garage to the edge of the property line. And with that being said, that garage door is a 14-foot wide garage door, which helps accommodate that turning radius as well. The intention is not for a small microcar to fit in the garage. It's to fit, a large sedan or small compact SUV. And we have accommodated that type of configuration within the turning radius and within the garage size itself.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Wildman?
Only because the question was asked and I'm not sure it was answered. What turning radius template did you use to confirm that a large SUV or a larger vehicle can do it? So which of the turning radius templates did you use?
I had not said large SUV. I used the same turning radius that I used for a similar project on Carruthers Avenue.
Which is?
I have to look it up. I don't have it in my notes right in front of me. It more than accommodates it, though.
Anything further, Mr. Segay, or can you not answer Mr. Wildman's question?
I can't answer it to this point, to his point, but
There's only two templates you could have probably used. You're not sure which one you used?
no, I'm not sure exactly which one I used. I didn't anticipate having this question being posed at the moment. I'd be happy to follow up on that and show a more detailed diagram on the turning radius.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Thank you. If we're to make a decision today, it would have to be in front of us today. But thank you for attempting.
Ms. McLean, you have a question or comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just on that turning radius, if there is going to be a proposed severance line there, that may affect the backing out onto the rear dwelling unit's property. But I'm going to leave that there. I just want to verify with Ms. Daou that the reduced lot area is has been certified by a surveyor. And I just couldn't see the variance for the reduced rear yard setback of 4.48 shown on the site plan. So.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So that information was conveyed from the survey for the lot area reduction, and that was transferred onto the site plan. The rear yard reduction is shown on the site plan. It's perhaps a bit faded, but you can see the diagonal line that, oh, thank you. Easier to you can see that it's dimensioned on this line here. The red line is showing roughly the dimensioned line, and the red lines have just been added. Red and green lines have just been added for added clarity. But you can see here that the setback is shown at 4.48 meters proposed at that east corner, and then running diagonally along, and then the required would be 5.62 meters shown highlighted by the green, with the portion of the building that's highlighted in the faded red coloring. That's the portion that would be within that requested relief area.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions from the members on this application?
Just a point of clarification again, Mr. Chair, I'm really sorry to have to ask this again. What was the outer turning radius that Mr. Segay referred to?
I apologize. I don't recall. Justin, are you still there?
I thought he said 3.7 meters, I thought, but I don't want to put words in his mouth. So I'm looking at a turning radius right now. That's why I'm wondering.
He said 3.7 meters from the garage door to the property line.
Okay.
Sorry, yes, 3.75 meters from the edge of the garage door to the property line.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Daou. Thank you, Mr. Segay. I think we'll reserve on this application, and you will have our notice of decision in your hands in 10 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. The next application we'll deal with today are items 12 and 13, 112, 114, 116, and 118 Sherbrooke Avenue. Consent for conveyances. Maintenance and joint use agreement, grant of easement right of way to subdivide the property into 4 separate parcels of land in order to create separate ownerships for 2 long semi-detached dwellings with secondary dwelling units in each of the semi-detached units which have already been constructed. And I believe it's Ms. Hill who is the agent on this application.
Hello.
Ms. Hill, once again, the oath. I should send you a copy. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
Yes, I do swear.
Okay. So briefly, Ms. Hill, your request.
Okay. I have a very short slide presentation that's helpful.
Okay.
If it could be put up. Okay, so these are the buildings. They actually are completed. I didn't have a quite up-to-date slide. So they're a pair of long semis with primary units facing the street, and that's what you're seeing here. So it's primary units are the ground and the second floor facing the street. And then also facing the street, there are basement units that are sort of half basement. At the back, the same thing repeats. And the backyard is used for parking. And there are 6 surface parking spaces in the back. So you've seen this before because we came before for a severance application to divide the property down the center into 2 halves. And we had some minor variances as well. And now we're back to divide the properties front to back, essentially, because they can be owned not just as 2 buildings, but as 4 ownerships. And that way an owner could own the primary unit and the secondary unit below it, as well as a parking space in the back. Since we were here, however, the zoning bylaw changed. So we thought that we were grandfathered in, but in fact, it turns out that we probably aren't grandfathered in. So we are also coming to you with a variance request. That has to do with the flag lot. So the flag lot, if we go to the next slide, this is a site plan. It shows you the 2 buildings, how they're divided front to back, and the parking in the backyard. The driveway is coming down the center between them. So then the next slide, this is how we would like to further divide up the ownerships. So the yellow hatched area is the space that everybody uses in common to drive and to navigate in order to get to the rear yard parking, in order to walk down the driveway in the center. And the flags are the 2 halves of those yellow portions that go up and meet the street. So they were built to 1.5 meters in width, which was at the time the requirement for a flag. The intent of the flag is to provide enough space for underground services to feed to the rear units. And we had no difficulty, or the contractor had no difficulty in installing those services within the space that was allotted.
Yep.
Now the bylaw requests 1.7 meters for that same purpose. But I hope you appreciate it. It has been built successfully this way. So we certainly have met the intent of servicing the rear units with the flag. So the severances that we're proposing, you'll see them diagrammed in color here. If you look at part 1, for example, the unit that's on part 1 would own the front property, and their ownership is contiguous back to their parking spaces in behind. Same thing with the unit that's under the words part 7. They own part 7 and the land going back to include their parking spaces in behind. And then the rear facing units have a different shape of property, but essentially they own their dwelling, primary and secondary, and their parking spot. And then over the yellow hatched area, they all share variances between each other to ensure that everybody can get in and out and do their turning back and forth to get out of their parking spots. So that's the gist of it, and it's quite simple. I understand that there are two ways of severing up these long semis. One is what we're proposing, where each primary and secondary unit piece owns its parking. The second way that this can be done is where the front units don't actually own any parking. They have easement rights to use parking, but they don't own it. Both of these methods of severing have been undertaken over the past 3 years. Both of them are in existence in the city. I'll show you some examples of this one. They both seem to function just fine. We have chosen this strategy because we know that people really like to know that they own their parking. What's more, people have a sense of obligation in the maintenance of their space when they know they own it. And it can simplify relations between neighbors when everything is clear and people have a clear sense of obligation to that which they own. So next slide. These are just 3 examples, these following 3 slides of other properties that are severed in this way, attaching the ownership of the parking to the dwelling unit. This one's on Carruthers. Your committee would have approved it a few years back. And you'll see on the right, this is just a snapshot taken from Geo Ottawa that gives you an idea of how those property parcels are divided up, very much like the diagram that I just showed you. The next one, please. This one's on Hinchy. Same idea, except this is only one building or one long semi and not a pair. But again, you'll see on the Geo Ottawa snapshot, we've got the same scenario with the front unit owning a piece of property back and including its parking space, which is just disappearing under that cloud. Next slide. This is one on Bayswater. Those first 2 were by my office. This one is from another design firm, but with the same scenario. In this instance, it's off a rear laneway. And so the center portion of the lot isn't used for access, only for servicing. And the parking is off the rear lane. But the principle is the same, that the front unit owns its parking space. Next slide. I think that's it. That's all that I really need to say. And so because it's been built, we know that it's satisfying the intent as far as services. It's functioning well in terms of people using that back parking area. And we would just like to wrap up the legal work and have it severed front to back. I also would request that the noise condition that has been proposed by city staff actually be waived. The first time that we came through, a noise condition was applied to the file, and the owner has complied with that condition. He has noise notices registered on title. And so to do it again just seems, unnecessary.
So he's already met the condition that was imposed originally.
Yeah, that's right. And there's a bit of fear that if the condition or the city's staff's definition of a noise study might have changed in some small print way, that we then would have to actually repeat it, that there may be some glitch where we can't just produce the same piece of paper again, and that would just be quite heartbreaking and frustrating.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, Ms. Hill. Ms. Hill, you're aware of the department's comments?
Yes.
Okay. And if the department, which planner handled this application?
Myself, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Hamilton. Okay. If you'd like to articulate your concerns, please.
Certainly. Staff have no concerns with the requested minor variances to reduce the pole widths, so long as that the applicant can demonstrate that adequate servicing is in place per the condition. That's not a concern. We do have concerns with the proposed severance delineation. We do believe that the severance lines stray from the intent of infill long semi-detached dwellings and the definition of long semis and the type of dwelling that we're looking to see as infill development. The proposed lot fabric is not typical of the surrounding neighborhood, and we do have concerns about the maintenance of the small strip along the edges, as well as the long-term development viability of the lot. Or lots, plural.
You're concerned about the side yards, the maintenance of those?
Yes, if access is needed to maintain the fence or something similar.
How wide are those side yards, Ms. Hill?
The little strips along the side, I think they're 1 foot. We're just checking. Sorry, we're just checking.
They look wider than that.
Yeah, sorry, it's getting pulled up as we speak. Maintenance, it hasn't been a problem in the other instances at all. And I would suggest that you think about the context in which once this is built and dwelt in, those property lines aren't painted on the ground. And this creates a context in which people are generally aware of their ownership of their primary unit and their ownership of the parking space, and have a sense of obligation to care for the property as a result of their sense of ownership. And we haven't had any problems with people not taking care of that little strip. No, the width of this. Sorry. It's just not come on the radar in the actual on the ground experience of living with this scenario.
Those look to be approximately 1.5 meters.
Oh, the side yards themselves are 1.2 meters. I thought you were asking for the width of the narrow strip of ownership. No. But the side yard itself, yes, is 1.2 meters.
So there's no issues there.
Oh no, you can absolutely move down there with ease.
Okay. So Mr. Hamilton, if it's not the side yards, what are you concerned with again?
It was concerns about the ownership lines that were being drawn through the severance. So it would come down to whether part 2 would grant access to part 1 in order to maintain anything that part 1 owns.
Ms. Hill?
So it's just a pathway down there. There's not a lot of maintenance. Like, it's not like there's trees that you're trimming, or there's not really much going on down there. And it actually is wide enough to walk along if the person wanted to walk along there and pick weeds from the fence line. I just don't see it as an issue.
All right.
And it hasn't been raised before.
All right. So, Mr. Wildman, you had a question or comment?
2 comments. Could the JUMA not address that particular concern, Mr. Hamilton?
Perhaps that may be an avenue to deal with that. I would not know for certain, though, as that is reviewed by legal services staff.
Okay. I would suggest to you that it probably is a viable option. Second, just on the noise attenuation study, you heard Ms. Hill's comments. Any feedback on that? Is it possible that that was put in as a standard condition and not recognized that there was a study done? Is that a possibility, or do you know?
I have spoken with the engineers. We have taken a look at the conditions that were imposed from the first severance, and I've not had their approval to remove it from our perspective, at least. The reasoning is part of the condition actually contains the requirement that we need to know the notices that are on title will follow with all 4 new parcels and will be on those parcel titles as well. So I believe that is part of the condition that we are most interested in.
Okay, I would suggest to you, and I don't know where they are, but if they're on title, they're on title, and they run with title. Okay, thank you.
If there remains any concern about that, could perhaps the condition just be changed to confirm that they have been applied to all 4 titles?
Mr. Hamilton?
Perhaps, although this is a new severance with new severance lines, and they are the standard conditions that we do typically impose. I do recognize the applicant's position given that the dwellings are already built. However, staff would like the condition to remain if possible.
Mr. Chair, I would suggest to you that if committee were inclined, and if we ever got to that point, one way of dealing with it is suggesting that the condition be amended, that appropriate noise warning clauses run on title of all properties concerned. And I think that would satisfy the concern, I think. But if we ever get to that point, that might be something we could say.
That would certainly be a condition that would be pleasing to my client.
Thank you, Mr. Wildman. Ms. McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to go back to that sliver of land, if part 2 were to fence along their property line, would there be room for a ladder for them to maintain their wall, or would they have a right of way over that sliver that belongs to part 1 to be, because there's no easement or right of way given to part 2 to maintain that wall? So that was one question. And then the other question is the configuration of the proposed severances. One of the criteria under 5124 is the shape and sizes of the lots. And these are irregularly shaped lots. And I wouldn't think that a plan of subdivision would create lots of this, this shape. So that's a concern that I do have.
I think Mr. Wildman is correct that when it comes to issues of ladders and maintenance of sidewalls, we should be able to cover all of that in the joint use and maintenance agreement. The intention is certainly not to have a fence, a few feet from another fence. That is intended to be open. So we will simply have to craft that joint use and maintenance agreement in order for this to be functioning in the way that's intended. When it comes to the shape and pattern of the lots, you make a good point, Mrs. McLean. However, if we sever it in the other way, which is the sort of the second option for severing long semis, we also result in lots that aren't following the pattern of the neighborhood. So the zoning bylaw, when it put in place the long semi, seems to have willingly departed from that pattern. And having departed from it, we now have to problem solve sort of the most appropriate way of dividing up land in order to fulfill the other intents of the bylaw. So when we think about lot pattern, I think somebody made reference, it was the city planner made reference to future developability of the lot. So we would pride ourselves in saying, first of all, that we've built our buildings to last a very long time. But also, secondly, I think that you can see in your role at the Committee of Adjustments that when eventually new developments do happen, there is the need to consolidate lots and to resever land in order to take best advantage of new situations and to meet housing need in new ways. It's very hard to predict what will happen to a lot like this, say 100 years from now, if it should come up for redevelopment. Meeting the needs right now, I think, in a way that is no more or less departing from the lot fabric, I think is reasonable.
So if you could give us those two dimensions, but I think is a one lot for bylaw purposes apply to a long semi-detached? despite the two ownerships? I'm just clear on that.
Mr. Hamilton, could you speak to that?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, one lot for zoning purposes does apply to long semis.
So how does the ownership, when you further subdivide, I'm just wondering if the zoning bylaw is really addressing whether or not a long semi should be severed in the first place. So how does a severance of a long semi then, how is that anticipated under the one lot?
I don't know that it would be dealt with specifically through one lot for zoning purposes, but the introduction of the new section for long semis within the zoning bylaw does provide zoning bylaw alternatives for lots that are going to be, or for long semis that are going to be severed front to back. That's where the requirement for the pole widths comes from, to ensure that the rear unit has adequate access and servicing area to function independently if they're not co-owned. The one lot for zoning purposes does assist long semis by allowing parking for the front unit to be located in the rear and not on the same lot as the front unit once it is severed. So that's sort of where the one lot for zoning purposes would come into play in our opinion.
Okay, thank you. If we just could get those measurements at the side there.
Hey, hang on. I'm zooming in on a drawing here. It's in the draft R plan on file at the committee. And it doesn't seem to be dimensioned on the draft R plan, though it is almost at the halfway point of the 1.2 meter side yard. So I think we'd have to do some math here to figure out. We know that it's close to 2 feet or 1.6 meters. If you wanted, you could step this down for a moment while we do the math, but hang on. On the right-hand side, it comes to 0.58 of a meter instead of 0.6. So that would be the length of the outer narrow strip. And on the right, on the left, it comes to 0.61. So I think those differences just have to do with construction tolerances.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right, so any further questions or comments from the committee? I think we'll reserve on this application as well, Ms. Hill. And you'll receive our notice of decision within 10 days.
Okay, thank you. Have a good day.
Application that's before us. Item 15 on the agenda. 467 Echo Drive. These are minor variances to permit a reduced rear yard and easterly side yard setback and increase projections for the proposed addition and the eaves. It is proposed to demolish the existing one-story addition located on the southeast corner of the dwelling and construct a new, larger one-story addition in its place. For bylaw purposes, Clegg Street is considered the front yard for this property. Mr. Rosier is the applicant's agent. Hi there. Going to get your address for the purposes of the.
Yeah, I am in fact the agent, John Donkin.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
And my address is
Sorry.
138 Hopewell.
I'm not reading my list properly, Mr. Donkin. Okay. And your address for the record?
138 Hopewell Avenue.
We've reviewed the application. We note that there are letters of support. The planning department has no concerns. You're aware of Hydro's comments regarding servicing and clearances. You're aware of right away on a private approach permit being needed possibly.
The existing driveway is unchanged, as is the existing parking. They both come off Clegg.
So you don't need an additional private approach?
No.
Okay. The department has requested no conditions on this application. Are there any comments or questions from the committee regarding this application?
You need to do an oath, Mr. Chair.
Pardon me?
You need to do the oath.
Yeah, I know. I just remembered I got to do the oath. See, I forgot. I had to write out the wrong name and I didn't do the oath. It's a long day. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
Yes, I do.
Okay. All right. So like I said, we've received your application and all the documentation. There are no concerns from the neighbors. The department is has no issues with the application. There are no conditions. One comment from Hydro and nearby residents are in support. So all in favor of approving this application as submitted. Good luck with your application. Your application's your development. Your application's approved.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Next application on the agenda is item number 18, 483 Everett Avenue. That's minor variances to permit a reduced southerly side yard setback and increased building height and an increased building setback from the front lot line. It is proposed to demolish the existing rear yard deck in order to construct a new 3-story addition with a second floor rooftop patio. Mr. Rosier is the agent for the applicant. Is she there? Is someone else handling this application for the applicant?
Mr. Chair, we have Clayton Payer on the call and he raised his hand.
Mr. Payer? Can't hear you. Still can't hear you.
There we go. How's that?
Fine. And you are, sir?
Clayton Paye. I'm with Amstead Design Build, and I'm acting as the agent of the client.
Okay. All right. All right. If you would like to proceed please, with your applicant, with your presentation.
I'll keep it short. We are just asking for relief.
Mr. Chair, we require these sworn oaths, please.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before we get going, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do confirm.
Okay. Do you have any presentation materials that we need to put up?
I have not provided any.
Okay. All right, please proceed.
So we're asking minor variances, so a minor relief on the height. The current zoning is for 8.5 meters. We're asking for 9.07 meters to match the existing home's height of 9.07 meters. We're asking for a reduced side yard setbacks from 1.5 meters to 1.2 meters to match the existing building side yard setbacks. And this being a relatively new bylaw requirement, we are asking for relief of the 24 meters front yard setback of the rear of the home to 28.7 meters. The existing home was built in the late 80s, early 90s and situated farther back than its typical neighboring lots. It's roughly about just over 9 meters setback from the front yard line, pushing the house farther back than typical. This is relatively due to the lot's very narrow 9.1 meter lot width and 50 meter lot depth. So we're asking
the lot's 50 meters deep.
Yes.
So the rear yard depth will be how much? With the proposed construction?
It will be, sorry, I don't directly in front of me. 22 meters.
Okay. All right. Please proceed.
22.7.
Thanks. Keep going.
There was no concern from the neighboring school. We met with them and answered any of their questions. I believe they gave a letter of support.
Yes, we have that on file.
Yeah, the adjacent neighbor voiced concerns about shadowing. We feel this might be moot. Our lot is directly north of their lot and does not currently overshadow them. There was concern about overlook. We are in fact removing the existing deck that does overlook their lot, and the addition will essentially block any overlook to their property. We have no additional windows to their property. There was concerns about mature trees. We have no, we're not removing any trees, and we will protect the ones that are on the lot during construction.
Okay. And you've had discussions with the neighbor,
The school.
immediate neighbor. You've not had discussions with the immediate neighbor.
No, we received their comments this week and have not spoken with them.
None of those issues between that the neighbor has raised have been resolved.
With the school, yes.
With the school, yes, but not with the neighbor on the other side of your property.
No, they have not.
Yeah. All right. I think the committee would like to know why the height increase. This is a new build on the back of a building.
We are matching the existing roof line of the home. The only increase is to match that roof line, and that's only for a minor 5 feet, and then it drops down to a lower height for the remainder of the proposed addition.
Okay. And that side yard setback is as a result of the change in the zoning bylaw.
Yeah, the side yard, the home was built as of right in its day, and it's no longer conforming to the current bylaw.
Yeah. Mr. Wilder, you had some comments or questions?
Mr. Payer, you just mentioned the 5 feet on that height. Why the need for that?
The 5 feet adds to the upstairs, current upstairs bedrooms to reconfigure them to provide better optimal living space. So we are moving that part of the addition on the second, well, I say second floor, it's technically the third floor as per code.
But you don't have any architectural, I see a site plan here, any architectural rendering? I can see
I
it in
believe the
a perspective.
I believe the submission had side elevations provided.
So that roof line is what's coming, the extra 5 feet, is that, let me follow where the additional height is.
Correct. If you see that at the very top, that piece is 5 feet plus a foot of roof overhang. And then it descends downwards to a mono sloped roof.
And there's no windows in the addition on the south side of the property to.
That's correct.
So there's no overlooking and loss of privacy issues with that.
That's correct. By removal of the deck, we are limiting most of the current overlook issue.
Okay.
So that, if I may, that increased 5 feet, is that to provide, rather than provide a full 9 foot ceiling in terms of that's something they're looking for, a high ceiling, as opposed to a.
Yes, that's correct. It's to maintain the existing that floor's ceiling level without having a drop.
I was just going to say, I mean, one could go for those 5 feet. One could go for a lower ceiling, couldn't they? In terms of the profile, I mean, in terms of what you're asking for. All right, thank you.
All right. In regards to the 4 tests, Mr. Payer, how does this application meet those requirements?
Yes, so we believe the variance is minor. Every reduction in either setback or width or height is minimal. The desirable appropriateness of the home is maintained. We are maintaining the living space of the home. We are not changing the established character of the streets, and we're not creating any new typologies or patterns within the street. We do meet the official plan in that we're maintaining the existing dwelling within the urban area and making use of existing infrastructure. The orientation size in addition, extending to the rear yard where the space is available, means it's minimal impact to the character of the neighborhood and maintaining the footprint of the existing green space in the rear yard. And for zoning, we are, sorry about that, lost my notes here. And we're generally meeting the official plan in that we're continuing the existing neighborhood's character.
The committee would have appreciated if you had actually spoken to the neighbor immediately to the south. However, I note from the looking at the elevation that the extension of the roof line does not seem to be significant. You're not providing any windows on the addition on the south side of the building. Your southerly side yard setback is an existing condition and is only required because of the change in the zoning bylaw. And as far as the 28.8 or the 24 meter standard that the new bylaw has for building location from a front lot line, I don't, to my mind anyway, there's not much of an issue here, given the fact that the lot depth is 50 meters and your rear yard with the addition in place is still going to be 22 meters deep. So, any comments from the other members regarding this application? We ready to vote on whether to approve this application as submitted? Mr. Wilder?
I'll support B and C. I will not support the variance A with regards to the height, notwithstanding that there's no windows. I still feel it's changing the profile and the height. I feel that there could be a lower ceiling. So that's my position. I'll support the application for B and C. I will not support variance A. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilder. Ms. McLean?
Mr. Chair, I'm prepared to support the application as filed.
Thank you. Ms. Oakshire?
I'm prepared to support it as filed as well.
I as well. That's all variances B and C unanimously approved. Variance A approved by the majority with the dissent of Mr. Wilder. Your application is approved, Mr. Payette. Good luck with your project.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Next application we'll hear today is item 19 on the agenda, 660, 658 Cole Avenue. This is a consent to subdivide a property into two separate parcels of land in order to create separate ownerships for each half of a two-story semi-detached dwelling currently under construction. And the agent for this is Mr. Kelly or Mr. Chown.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Kelly, your address for the record, please.
It's 240 Michael Copeland Drive.
Okay, thank you. So this semi is under construction or completed construction?
It's under construction.
Okay. All right. I notice that the planning department has no concerns. You're aware of Hydro's comments regarding covering expenses required for electrical supply and information regarding servicing and clearances, all their standard stuff.
We are.
And right-of-way people and the need for a private approach permit.
We are.
Okay. And the conditions that the department would like to apply, cash in lieu, already well confirmed. The tree planting plan has been eliminated because that condition has been met. Independent services confirmed in a joint use and maintenance agreement.
We are confirmed, correct.
Okay. And did I go through the oath?
We did not.
I think I did. No, I didn't. Jeez. Bad. I'm going to have somebody standing behind me with a stick. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do swear.
Yes, and I can guarantee that my memory isn't what it used to be. Anyway, so those are the conditions that are requested. You've seen Hydro's comments. The department is happy now. Well, they're now happy that the tree planting issue has been resolved. There's no comments from the neighbors. Any comments, quick questions from members of the committee on this application? Are we prepared to vote on this application? All in favor of the application with the amendments to the condition? Your application is approved. Good luck with your project.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And next application on the agenda is items 20 and 21. 217 Glen Avenue, otherwise known as 8 and 10 Quill Street. Is there a consent to subdivide the property into two separate parcels of land in order to establish separate ownerships for the existing semi-detached dwelling? And the minor variance is to permit a reduced rear yard setback for the existing semi-detached dwelling. And Ms. De La Rosa, I believe, is the agent's applicant, or the applicant's agent, sorry. And your address for the record, please?
Yes, so it's 396 Cooper Street.
Okay. All right. If you'd like to give us a brief presentation on your application, please.
Mr. Chair, we need the oath.
Oh, yes, the oath.
Thank you.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time.
I do.
I'm going to put this on tape. I don't think that's legal. Anyway, please proceed.
So thank you, Mr. Chair and members of committee. My name is Lisa Della Rosa, and I'm here as a planner with Foten Consultants, presenting on behalf of the property owner, Mr. Paul Sab, for what was formerly known as 217 Glynn Avenue. I believe you guys are familiar with the project, so I'm going to run through this quite quickly.
Yep.
So in summary, we are seeking to sever the property into 2 lots containing 2 semi-detached units. I want to note that this was before committee in 2017, where minor variances were granted for the construction of the semi-detached units. So at the time, there was no intention to sever. However, that has since changed. The units do have occupancy permits and were constructed in line with the variances from 2017. So if we can go to the next slide. The property is general urban, which permits a variety of uses, including a full range and choice of housing types. The designation supports intensification, where it will complement the existing pattern of development and scale of development on the street. So the property is zoned R3A, which is the residential 3rd density, and that does permit semi-detached units. Next slide. So the project fits into the lot fabric of the neighborhood, which you can see is a mixture of low-rise, detached, semi-detached, and townhouse dwellings. The proposed severance, outlined in blue, create lots that are similar in size to the other semi-detached units, which are shown in red on that screen. Next slide. So as mentioned, we're here to request a consent to sever to facilitate the legal sale of the northern unit, which now has the address of 8 Quill. The severance line would be the property party wall between the 2 semis. Next slide. So the requested variances are one for each lot. The creation of the new lot line would result in the change of the yard locations, requiring relief from the rear yard setback from a requirement of 4 meters to 1.34 meters. Next slide. When originally approved in 2017, Glynn Avenue was considered the front lot line, and the units were designed to conform to such. Now that with the severance and the requirements of section 144 of the zoning bylaw, Quill would be considered the front yard, therefore resulting in what was the interior side yard becoming the rear yard. That's what facilitated the minor variance for both of these properties. Next slide. So here are your 4 tests. It maintains general intent and purpose of the official plan. It's the purpose of the zoning bylaw is intact. It's appropriate for this type of development on these lands, and the variance is minor in nature. So it's my planning opinion that the consent is good planning and meets the criteria of the 4 tests under the Planning Act. The minor variance is technical in nature and does not reflect a change to the existing condition or impacts to the neighbors. The relief required, as I said, meets the 4 tests, and for these reasons, I think the application is appropriate and should be approved. Next slide. So we have received and acknowledged the conditions that were in the staff report and agreed to them, and I'm here for any additional questions.
Okay. I think Ms. McLean had some questions regarding the variance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just concerned that the semi-detached was built under one set of requirements in the zoning bylaw. And then along comes a severance, and there's another set of zoning requirements that are not met. So I don't know whether there's a loophole in the zoning bylaw. I don't know if planning can comment on this. But what was built and got a building permit for and was a side yard now because it's going to be severed becomes a rear yard. And it's just that if the severance were to have been brought at the same time as the original application, I'm not sure this problem would have arose, but it would have been a smaller semi-detached that would have had to been built on the property. So I guess my question to both planning and to the applicant's agent is, it puts us in an awkward position now of having what's called a side yard now becoming a rear yard, and to going out to the property owners in the area and saying, oh, there's another variance having to be requested after it's built. So I just wonder if I could get some comment from planning staff on that, on the requirements.
Yes, Ms. McLean. So the relocation of the front line now for the lots due to recently enacted bylaw changes, section 144.
I can add a little bit of context there too. If you look, you can go back in the slide deck, but what is now the interior side yard is actually quite oversized because of, I think if you go to slide 6 would be best. What you can see here is now, oh, that one's perfect. So what you can see here is their interior side yard of the semi of part 1, for ease of reference here, has a side yard setback of 4.55, whereas bylaw would require that to be less now under the current change as city staff has indicated. What's happened is the section 44 of the zoning bylaw, because both doors front onto Quill Street, that deems it the front lot line, whereas prior to in 2017, it was the shorter of the 2 lot lines. So that's sort of where the issue comes from, if I'm explaining that correctly. So we do technically have the same amount of space provided for backyard amenity space in the corner side yard and the backyard, but it's just the orientation of them have changed. So now you have larger interior side yards to accommodate for what was the original backyard, if that makes sense.
Well, was section 144 in place in 2017 when this application was dealt with?
No. From what I understand, this came out of the R4 rezoning initiative review at the city.
But this is an R3 zone, I guess.
Sorry, the mature neighborhoods, I misspoke.
And where's the rear yard for part 2 then?
Part 2 doesn't have a rear yard because, well, so right now rear yard is the 1.34, but under the original one, there wouldn't have been one because of it shared the party wall.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further questions from the members of the committee regarding this application? You're aware of the conditions that are being requested?
We are.
Or imposed independent services, creating a drainage plan, a joint use and maintenance agreement, conveying a 3 meter by 3 meter corner site triangle. An additional arborist report required to ensure survival of the protected trees. You're aware of that? Party wall as per the building code.
Yes, we are aware of those.
Okay. The department has no concerns. There are no objections, obviously, from the neighbors. The community association. I think for me, I think it's a little clearer now that section 144 changed, and that's why we're in the situation we're in. Anyway, are we prepared to vote on this application? All in favor of the application as presented? application, and let's look sure. Yes, okay. All right, your application.
No, I was dissenting, Mr. Chair. So I was trying to put up my hand for no. I'm voting against this application.
Oh, yeah, okay, all right. So it's a 4-1 decision. The application is approved. Good luck with your project. Your project's done, actually.
Thank you so much.
It's not much of a project anymore.
We'll still have to be severed.
Yes, that's true. All right, it's a legal project. All right, thank you very much. I believe that concludes the agenda for the 15th of September 2021. So we are now adjourning and reconvening as on the reserve sections.
Mr. Chair, I just wondered if we could extend our wishes to Warner for a happy retirement and thank her for all her hard work over the years with the committee.
She's retiring to a second job.
I'm out for hire. Thank you very much. It's been an honor and a privilege. Thank you.